Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Politically Conscious returns. On this episode, we separate fact from fiction as Donald Trump's State of the Union, what was real and what was propaganda. We break down what Gavin Newsom actually said to Andrew Dickens in Atlanta versus the spin, which party truly delivers for Black economic progress, and we examine the Texas Senate showdown, Jasmine Crockett versus James Talarico. No narratives, just receipts. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. What's up, everybody? This is episode 63 of Politically Conscious, trying to keep this thing together. People moving all over the place. My man Emil is coming to you guys live from Europe today. So thank you. I don't even know what time it is there. Take yourself off of mute, brother, just so you know before we introduce you. But if you are a first-time watcher of the Politically Conscious show, we basically take clips from around the internet and off of media and try to give you a no-spin approach. As we always say, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. Emil, introduce yourself as we get into these cuts coming off of this State of the Union address by President Trump.
Emil Bryant, political consultant, author, speaker. My job is to help candidates tell the truth. I believe that every voter needs the information to make informed and intelligent decisions. Bad news does not get better with time. Tell the truth, tell it early, tell it often. The voters demand it and require it to make good decisions about you, the candidate.
Well, you know, that's where you and I completely disagree. I don't think the voters require it at all. And that's why this thing called politics is such a game of basically a show versus reality. So if people demanded the truth, I think we would get a different view of what actually happens in this thing, this republic of ours, if you will. But let's go ahead and play this first cut. We just coming off the State of the Union address, so a lot was said. I'm pretty sure that's what people want to talk about, and so we're obviously going to talk about it. But I will kind of set the show up and say, hey, I'm just going to make a couple of points that I saw, and we'll dialogue through it because it was a 2 hour, the longest in history, right? The longest State of the Union address in history, and so we're not going to do the whole 2 hours, if you will. And so I'll start with this cut, because I thought it was a point that is worthy of discussion. So let's start here, brother.
The removal of criminal aliens, in many cases drug lords. That is a shame. You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself. That is why I'm also asking you to end deadly sanctuary cities that protect the criminals and enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
A very, I guess, disruptive period of the State of the Union address. My brother Shelley had to go to the Capitol today. So for those who are looking for Shelley, unfortunately, he's not able to be on the show with us today. We typically try to bring you this discussion from the left and right of things, and I moderate as an independent. And so we're going to try to give you a one-winged version of this conversation today. But I did see our brother, just to highlight this, brother Shelley highlight prior to last night, that he thought this moment was a very strong moment that Republicans could use to help with the midterm, which was when President Trump basically set a trap and said, hey, stand up if you believe that you should focus on American citizens over illegal aliens. And literally you get the room spanning. One side of the room is to the right, standing up, clapping, and you get the whole left side sitting down, and he's saying, put American citizens first. And then we played the clip where he's going, in a sense, going back and forth and say, hey, you killed Americans, which is, a fair thought by her. But that moment is a very powerful moment going into the midterms where, in a sense, President Trump was, the country was starting to change. The immigration policy had been one of his high points coming into his first year. And recently the polls were saying, hey, we didn't know that it was going to act out this way. Well, that moment is looking like a major opportunity to kind of get a stronghold on the midterms because of the optics. And I think it's fair to say that, in a sense, the left or Democrats fell for the trap. Beautiful trap set by the showman, from my perspective. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was a beautiful trap, but I think he's well past optics saving him in this arena. It will sway a few people, but I don't think you're going to see a major bump. And the reason why is because, over the years, we've seen the State of the Union devolve. It has gone from a very staid performance. The president speaks, everybody listens. One side claps, the other side sort of nods, or nods disapprovingly or approvingly, depending on, who's in charge and what they're saying. And then a few years ago, you had somebody say, "You lie." And then you had somebody else say something else. And now you're here, you had somebody last year. Remember, we talked about last year, the brother with the cane, I can't think of his name. He ended up disrupting the Congress, and he had to get out. So we are seeing all of this disruption now because the State of the Union is no longer about the State of the Union. It's about theater. And to your point, he made a spectacle. He intended to create a spectacle. But even with that spectacle, he's not going to move the needle because the people who are abandoning him aren't looking for optics. They're looking for substance, and they're not getting it. And that's the problem. So you're right. He set a masterful trap, and the optics were fairly damning on the Democrats for that specific reason. The problem he's facing, though, is he's well past optics. He's not going to move the needle significantly. And the reason why is not because his MAGA base is not going to feed on that red meat. They will, but red meat is no longer going to satiate them the way it used to.
Yeah, I think you're wrong. I think you're dead wrong. But again, we'll figure this out as we go forward. But now I think the word that you said that I definitely wanted to key in on is the theater aspect of what, like you said, the State of the Union has become theater. I will, once again, as I've done before on this show, I would challenge that we as the constituents, we as the voters, have allowed it to become theater. Like we look at it as, look at how they're playing, but the fact that you can even set the trap, or that Trump in a situation could set this trap and it play out so beautifully on his part, and you say, I think the optics are strong because it actually makes, I'll say, your side, as you represent for our show, you represent the left on this show, and I'll say for your side of things, you literally are set up to say, disavow that you're not for American citizens. That's exactly how that looks. Not only does it look that way, but that's the statement that was set up. Now, when again, I say we as the people, we've set up the optics that we even have a State of the Union where the left and right sit on different sides of a room. Like when you think about any type of organization coming together, while you may have different factions, or in this situation, this is, as you said, the State of the Union. Our representatives shouldn't be sitting on the left or right. But the fact that they can present those optics and have so for years is because they're playing on what works on us. Like I want to kind of say, me with my one vote and with my power of my one vote, if I'm now set up to where they could consistently at the State of the Union still sit left and right. I had heard one time in the past that they don't even use the same bathrooms in the Capitol. I was later found out that that wasn't true, but I believed it just based on how divided our country started becoming with the politics. Like we've continually talked about on this show, how we need to have a robust left and a robust right, hash out issues to get us the best product. But clearly the theater that we're falling for now is one such that I think is ridiculous for the left to fall for that easy trap that the showman played perfectly. And again, that's just me calling it like it is. And again, I know you may not agree with me on this, but I'm just saying I think the optics are going to play much stronger than you suggest. I could be wrong, but that's my perspective. Go ahead and respond to that before I play another.
I want you to understand that I agree with you on everything but the effect of the optics. And the reason why is because his base is abandoning him for things beyond the red meat issues that moment presents. Yes, you are 100% right that he set a trap, and the Democrats fell for it. To your point, they should be intermingled because we're trying to show something other than a divided government. But this particular president is a showman first. We know that from all the things he's been doing since he started campaigning in 2015. He's a showman first. He is not a statesman at all. So when he does what he does, it appeals to a specific audience. And I'm telling you today, I'm not saying in the past now, I'm telling you today, he's not delivering on some of the promises he said he made. And because he's not delivering on them, the people who are abandoning, we're not talking about people who already don't rock with him. We're talking about people who have rocked with him, who said, yo, this Epstein thing, the economy is starting to look weird. You're starting to arrest and imprison American citizens in this immigration stuff. That dragnet is illegal. There's a lot of people on the right who are not going to be placated by a red meat optic issue. Not saying he didn't do it. He did a great job. The problem is the people.
Well, to me, a great job is
going to be swayed by that anymore.
Yeah, to me, the great job is that it works and does the exact opposite of what you're saying. That's what a great job is to me. I'm saying not only did it actually work in the show itself, I'm saying it's an effective job and it will shore up the midterms for the right. That's my perspective on it. And the bigger issue is you say he's a showman first. So to me, it's, and again, because you play the left, I'm going to say you in this situation. It's silly that your side falls for the showmanship. Like that's
my criticism. You know that's my criticism of the Democrats. Everything he does is predictable, and you still fall for it every single time. Like, this is part of the problem is you cannot defeat a showman with showmanship. You have to use something different. And the problem with the Democrats is they think they can upstage a showman, which only makes the showman more powerful.
Wow. Good point. All right. I want to go one more thought in reference to, again, we said we're not going to go too deep into the State of the Union since we're missing both sides. For anybody that's watching, if you've never watched us, we got a meal on the left of things, and we typically have either Brother Leo or Brother Shelley on the right of things. And so we were not able to get the full show. So I always kind of shorten it when we don't have all sides on the table. So I try to play the middle, play a little devil's advocate because when we're missing one side. And so because we can't do our full breadth of our show, we kind of go a little quicker and shorten, just giving y'all a heads up. And so we won't go too deep in the State of the Union. But here's another little short, very short clip that I wanted to bring up an additional point. Again, I'm putting the onus on us, politically conscious, on what can we do with our one vote? How can we have a perspective to, in a sense, again, we're falling for the show. That's on us to a degree. I want to keep owning that thought if we can. Let me play this cut as well.
Many, if not most, illegal aliens do not speak English and cannot read even the most basic road signs as to direction, speed, danger, or location. That's why tonight I'm calling on Congress to pass what we will call the Delilah Law, barring any state from granting commercial driver's licenses to illegal aliens.
We call this show Politically Conscious. Our tagline is, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. From my understanding, Emil, tell me if I'm wrong, but isn't that already the law? You're on mute again, brother. You're on mute.
Almost every state has a minimum standard of proficiency. There's just not, see, the way he framed it, it sounds like they just give out these licenses to anybody who asks for them. There is a test. There is a commercial driver's license test in every state. There are reciprocity agreements between states in certain arenas, but you're not going to see anyone just come in and just pass a test. Like they just give them out, like, please give me a commercial driver's license, and they just hand them out. That's not how it works. And one of the things that a lot of states, border states, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, the border states, typically, each of them does it slightly differently, but they all have a basic standard because they recognize that these are commercial drivers who are providing a lot of money to their economies. So this is going to be handled differently in California than in Arizona or New Mexico. But the bottom line remains that A, they're not handing them out just like candy, and B, there is already, every state already has a standard by which they are doing. Now the North American Free Trade Agreement and now the U.S., Mexico, Canada agreement, the agreement that replaced it, had some provisions for drivers who are transiting back and forth, bringing goods from Mexico and back in. So that provision is what he's probably wanting to change. But that provision is different than a state giving out a commercial driver's license.
So if he puts this in, it'll make it that provision will probably no longer be allowed, is what you guess, or what do you think?
That's kind of the way it goes. I'd have to look it up to be more certain. I'll see what his proposal is and why that proposal is so important. But the bottom line is that what you're seeing is he's taking this is where the propaganda is really strong. He's taking the isolated incidents of undocumented immigrants, causing trouble, committing crimes, committing murders, and he's turning that into a nuclear weapon to use as a cudgel against the Democrats and to advance his agenda. But when you look at the numbers, you're not seeing that. And they'll say, well, the numbers don't matter. Even one incident is bad. And when you go to that logic, that's another propaganda piece, right? Absolutely. Because the propaganda is all or none. Even one is too many. If that's true, and this is why it was, you're not outlawing drunk driving. We've outlawed drunk driving, yet we have drunk driving incidents, because even one is too many, yet we have laws in place to deal with them. Similar to, we already have laws in place to deal with people who are undocumented and causing trouble or crimes or murders. The problem is enforcement. Now, the one thing he didn't say throughout the State of the Union, that bill that the Gang of Eight negotiated before he was president again, the one that he's told his team not to pass, he has yet to bring it up. And a lot of what he's been doing on immigration was dealt with in that bill. And although he told his team, don't pass it, I need a campaign on it, a year after he's inaugurated, we still don't see that bill reintroduced into Congress.
So again, weeding through the propaganda, basically, like you said, demonizing a group to purport a so-called bill that, in a sense, we as the people, or if you're on that side of things, clap for, not realizing that it's typically buried in more propaganda than actuality. Because I love how you made the point of an incident here is being used to kind of highlight a need for a bill. Like we've talked about, I think on the show one time, we had the example of in Texas where they were passing the bill about the Fur Babies Act or something. If you recall that one, that was one of the most silliest ones. I don't know if you recall that one, the Fur Babies Act, something that was being passed in the state of Texas because some child supposedly went to a school and they was honoring that the child thought of themselves as an animal. You know what I mean? Like, and so they were letting them use like a cat litter box or something, instead of going to the actual bathroom because the kid or whatever. And so the research was that wasn't even true. That was propaganda. And there was literally an act being pushed in Texas over a conspiracy theory. And so I'm bringing that to example to say that's exactly what happens when it comes to this. There are reasonable ways to handle what we're seeing right now. You've talked about this, and I'll let you kind of highlight it because you're better at this than me. But President Obama was considered the king of sending people back, right? Or whatever. But the way it's done versus how Trump is doing is completely different. Brother Leo's talked about that, right? It's been done a completely different way. He basically from what I understand, Obama did it more at the border, sent you away, kept you from coming in, from what I understand, than the way Trump's handling this. I'm not talking about who's right or wrong. I'm talking about that at the end of the day, demonizing is something that our community as African Americans, we're so familiar with, right? Like I have been one to stand up on this show and say this illegal immigrant issue, it doesn't involve me personally. I'm right or wrong. That's just how I feel about it, right? Like I don't look into it personally, but I'm very aware of being demonized and laws being made off of propaganda versus actually what's happening. That I am very familiar with, and I can see that because that format is built off our backs. and it's just being used again in this arena. Your thoughts, and I'll play another clip.
I mean, the Black Codes and Jim Crow were absolutely built on poor reputations and lies and rumors and all the things that were said about Black people, especially Black men, but not exclusively, that led to those laws being enacted and enforced so brutally. However, what you're also seeing is that there's another agenda afoot. And this is where you really have to listen to the language of the propaganda to understand what's going on. What you're seeing is an erosion of constitutional norms. That erosion, to your point, is part of why there's so much controversy in how the undocumented immigrants are being removed from the country. Every person in America has the right under the Constitution to due process, period. They get every right associated with the Bill of Rights, period. Every person, not every citizen, every person. So when those norms are undermined, you're seriously seeing something happening to how we see not only undocumented immigrants, but also citizens, because it bleeds over. What you're seeing is the fact that American citizens are being harmed, they're being incarcerated, they're being held without due process, without habeas corpus. They're doing these things are happening, and it's not a healthy constitutional process. What President Obama was very focused on was border control, and he was called the deporter in chief by his own side because of it. This president has been saying he wants to get rid of the people who are in the interior. So typically Democratic administrations focus on border security and doing all their deportations at the border and not doing so much on the interior, whereas the Republicans tend to want to do more on the interior, getting people out who've been in the country for a while or who have records. And so those are the two ways that the different administrations have typically brought people out or deported people. The problem is now you're getting more of a dragnet, which is illegal, by the way. It's unconstitutional to just to say, I'm going to swoop up and get everybody and I'll sort it out later, because the Constitution says you're innocent until proven guilty, not the other way around. You're guilty and I'm going to sweep you up. And then, oh, by the way, you're a citizen. And by that time, I've harmed you and denied you of your rights. That's not how it's supposed to work. So all of this is against the constitutional norms. And you're seeing that play out. And the rhetoric is really, really damaging to the constitutional process of due process. And it's also hurting a lot of people who are trying to figure out what to do to be legal when they don't have legal status. That doesn't mean they're all undocumented and just snuck across the border. We're also talking about asylum seekers who are going through the process properly and are still being removed, even though they have pending cases and they did everything by the numbers. So it's not just one or the other. There's a spectrum of activity happening, but all of it is it following due process?
Now, thank you for bringing all of that to the table. I had Brother Shelley calling me, so I don't know if he's trying to get on the show, so we'll let him jump on if possible. I just sent him the link, so we'll see. But with that said, we got Brad says the Democrats do not care about this country. They'll actually say how evil and horrible it is. Brad, I would just simply challenge you to not fall for the extremes of things, if you will, because that's what they want us to do as the voters. That's just a challenge that I would say. But thank you for the comments. Let's keep this conversation moving. I know you're over in Europe, so I don't know if you're familiar with this happening. So I have to explain it to you if you're not. But Gavin Newsom is on a book tour, and he was here in Atlanta with Mayor Dickens. And so I don't know if you saw that or whatever, but this is something I saw our brother Shelley put on his page, and it caused a lot of noise. So I'm going to show it here, and I have a cut to play, but I want to talk about it before we play the cut. So this is something that's been floating around since Gavin Newsom came here in Atlanta on his book tour. And it basically says, Gavin Newsom to an all-black crowd. That's why I'm here. I am like you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. I can't read. What the hell, Emil?
So if you only limit it to that, first of all, take a look at the take a look at the B-roll of the crowd. It's a mixed crowd. It's not all black. It was black and
it's mostly white.
Folk in that
I ain't see no mixed crowd. It's mostly white. But go ahead.
Again, I saw the B-roll. I can't say anything about because I wasn't there. But when I saw the because I was like, okay, let me see who he's talking to. The B-roll of that show, not of any, was a lot of mixed folk in there, a lot of white folk in there. But the other thing is that is a talking point on his stump speech. He's been saying that to all crowds over the last several visits. And he's trying to say, I'm not an elite. I don't have the chops that a lot of these other dudes do. In fact, because the context of his comment was about SAT scores, he's saying, I'm not coming at this as somebody who says, I got mine, get yours. He's saying, I'm an average dude too. I worked hard, but I'm trying to make a way for everybody to work through it. So he's not just saying that to an all black crowd, one. And two, he's not saying that exclusively because he's using that as a point for a different talking point than what was presented. So as we've always done on the show, when we take a small snippet and don't look at the entire context, especially when somebody has used that talking point before in other crowds and other arenas, we run the risk of getting inflamed over something that isn't necessarily worthy of that attention.
No, absolutely. And I want to talk about the propaganda of it. I'm actually going to play a cut that gives the full context next, right? But before I go into that, I want to, again, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. So first, let me say this just to be funny. If he a 960 guy that can't read, then he is the epitome of white privilege, by the way.
That part.
So let me, as an aside, let me start
that part.
But here's the reality. So I always say how much I hate that both sides play the identity politics. And so, again, we're finna play a cut to give you the full context as Emil is talking about. But just that meme in itself is the epitome of, in this situation, the right playing the identity politics. Because what happens is each side kind of accuses the other. And the Democrats, your side is typically, I do think the left plays identity politics more than the right. Let me say that personally, right or wrong, that's how I feel, right? But I think people absolutely miss when the right does it. Because I always say on the show that the right does it. I hate it when both sides play it. And this is always the personal reason I always say I don't care about if Trump is racist. I don't care that people say that. I think it's noise at this point. I think this example right here is hopefully I can make it clear why I always say that, because I'm always taking the task by our watchers, by some of my middle dialogue members of, why don't you care about that, or why is that important? Because I'm about the actual politics, the actual policies of it, not the show of it, right? And so what happens is that situation, again, the context, like Emil said, is nothing like what you see in that meme. But that meme is being concocted to enrage and say, look at how racist the left is, how the elite on the left are, because he basically comes and thinks, let me talk down to these black people and say, hey, I'm not smart. I'm just like you. That's not what actually happened. But the propaganda is to meme it just like that, to enrage. And I literally watch people on the internet be mad because they didn't have the context. So this is why, if I'm making sense, I'm on a soapbox right now. But the reason I don't care about how racist someone is because what does it have to do with policy? But the politicians know that we can enrage you to get you to stay on our side. So therefore, they use the propaganda against us in this manner. I literally watched and heard Shelly say, hey, we can get more people on our side with this meme. The meme ain't got nothing to do with the truth. Let me quit saying it and show the video that gives everybody the full context. For me, this ain't about Gavin Newsom. It's about us as the voters not allowing the rage machine to be used against us and secure a vote. And it's not related to policy whatsoever. Related to policy whatsoever. All right, let me play this cut. I'm not trying to save Gavin Newsom. I hate when both sides play identity politics, because the identity politics are never related to the actual policies that matter to me as a constituent, especially locally. But let me play this cut so that I can get off my soapbox. I had to get on it, man, because now both sides have said it. People don't realize it. It's just aggravating for me, man. Aggravating that
it should be aggravating because we're trying to elevate the discourse to what actually affects people's bottom line, their day-to-day life, the way that they see the future that they have for their children. We're in a nation today where it looks like our children collectively will be less literate than the generation that bore them. Absolutely. Our children will be less prosperous than the generation that bore them. Our children may have a shorter lifespan than the generation that bore them. That is a concern, and that is a policy concern. And all of this inflammation that you see is not addressing those core issues of how to get our children back to the rights, back to the squares that they were. Even though we know what to do, we're not seeing it being done at the policy level.
So this is actually what happened with the Gavin Newsom thing, y'all.
All right, so last night, Gavin Newsom held an event in Georgia where he was interviewed by the mayor of Atlanta, Andre Dickens, about his new book called Young Man in a Hurry. And of course, the right wing had to make a big deal out of this, because even while Gavin Newsom and the mayor of Atlanta spoke for nearly 1 hour and 20 minutes, this right-wing troll account called End Wokeness pulled out this 38-second clip out of context, and I'm going to play it for you right now.
I'm not trying to impress you. I'm just trying to impress upon you. I'm like you. I'm no better than you. I'm a 960 SAT guy. and I'm not trying to offend anyone, trying to act all there if you got 940. But literally a 960 SAT guy. I cannot, you've never seen me read a speech because I cannot read a speech. Maybe the wrong business to be in.
Now, you might have noticed the Atlanta mayor laughing during that exchange, and the audience wasn't upset either. But it was interesting that Gavin Newsom was mentioning a 960 SAT and not being able to read. But there's a good explanation for that, too. And that's because when you pull up the transcript of this evening here and search for the word dyslexia, you can see that it was mentioned 9 times. And I've downloaded the entire event here. You can see on this timeline, it's here in orange all the way down here to the end. And that End Wokeness clip is right here. But what it didn't include was the setup for that question. And part of the setup was talking about the fact that Gavin Newsom was raised by a single mother, but through his father, he actually traveled with the Getty family, and the differences between growing up poor in one household and seemingly rich in the other. And with that, Mayor Dickens asked this question.
What would you like for the reader to know more intimately about you and how those two separate lives that you had together and the tough decisions you made and the risk that you had to take, and even growing up with dyslexia and all that, like, what do you want us to take from that and where you are today?
And with that, I'm going to take you back to the end of that End Wokeness clip and see what Gavin Newsom said right afterwards.
Maybe the wrong business to be in. My dyslexia, I haven't overcome dyslexia. I'm living with it. I was the guy in the back of the classroom and my head down, just praying the teacher didn't call on me. I went through, I think I lost count of how many schools I had to go to.
And that's why no one who was there to hear Gavin Newsom's words was offended, not the mayor or anyone in the audience. But of course, that didn't matter to the MAGA echo chamber. And of course, old white guys like Bill Mitchell here couldn't help himself, because he rushed to tweet out, "I would not have believed this if I didn't see it with my own eyes." He just told an entire black audience that he can relate to them because he's stupid and illiterate. And not only did he not say he's stupid and illiterate, but Bill here assumes that it was an entire black audience. But was that true? Because as you can see here, here's Gavin Newsom and the mayor at the end of this speech. And as you can see when the camera turns around, this audience seems to be filled with the majority of white people. And here's another angle of the audience outside waiting to go in. Would you agree with Bill and say this looks like an entire black audience waiting to go inside? And just a final reminder that the same people that are clutching their pearls over what Gavin Newsom said last night are the same people that tried to excuse Trump for the Obama Lion King disaster that he posted on True Social just a couple of weeks ago. It's a joke.
So FYI, Atlanta has events, like, for example, when I went to see Tyson Neil deGrasse, because I love science, It wasn't but me and my lady and a few other black people in the crowd. So Atlanta can be. I'm just saying. I ain't seen a lot of people that look like me when I went to see Tyson, the black astrophysicist. That's amazing to me, and I love science. So I went to see his speech. One of the best I shouldn't say speech, that I've ever went to in my life. But just to let people know in Atlanta, so the white guy makes an assumption that it's an all-black crowd because Mayor Dick is there and it's in Atlanta. But as I said, as you can see, that crowd is far from, I didn't even see no black people in them shots. I'm just telling you but again, it can happen, y'all. Just to let y'all know, FYI. Atlanta, the city of Atlanta will actually be no more, the actual city limits of Atlanta, not counting our surrounding areas, but in about 5 years will no longer be majority black. In about 2 years, based on all the people that are coming here, it's like 52% black right now. And that's talking about the actual city limits of Atlanta. Now,
the fall of another chocolate city. DC is no longer majority black, and now Atlanta's on its way. Just another, how the cookie crumbles, man. We were not a majority in many cities, then we were a majority in many cities, and now we're not a majority in cities again. So it's going to change over and over again. The demographics of this nation are as they are, changing every year.
Yep. So again, and just so you know, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. We just broke down the propaganda in that specific situation. So again, if you hear the left or the right, this is my personal soapbox and I'm done with it. Yelling about how racist someone is, it is the okie doke over what they're actually doing. Do not fall for that outrage. I'm not saying that sometimes these things are not actual racist. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm highlighting is when that's being focused on, that is not the actual policy that's being pushed through, and become aware of it. Don't let that outrage move you to be so outraged that you don't pay attention to what's happening. Here's a young brother talking about Gavin Newsom personally that I thought was a fair perspective that I wanted to bring to the table and see what you thought, brother.
Hassan Piker is receiving backlash.
Name is Case and 4K to give him his credit.
Hassan Piker is receiving backlash because he was asked if he'd vote for Gavin Newsom or JD Vance for president in 2028, and Hassan responded and said that he'd vote for third party. Now, Gavin Newsom represents neoliberal capitalism. He's pro-billionaire, he's dismissive towards the homeless, and he even praises evil presidents like Ronald Reagan. Vance, on the other hand, represents nationalist capitalism, so you'll see that they both operate inside the same economic system that is disproportionately harming, destroying, and drowning working class families in this country right now. Electoral politics under capitalism offers different managers of the same economic system, not a transformation of the system itself that the people need. No matter who wins the election, the core system stays the same under capitalism. Capitalism puts private corporations, profit, Wall Street, and billionaires before the people in this country. It's like switching CEOs at a company. Now, the new CEO might change the vibe, maybe adjust some policies, and maybe treat workers a little better or worse, but at the end of the day, the goal of the company stays the same, and that is maximizing profit. And I'm going to be very clear. I don't think that JD Vance is better than Newsom. But if Newsom ends up on that ballot, don't be surprised if people sit out, and don't get mad at them either, because leftists are saying and warning you not to put Gavin Newsom on the ballot. Run somebody else. The Democrats need to find somebody else. And liberals will say that if I don't want to vote for their corporate shield, then I hate marginalized people. Meanwhile, I'm an Afro-American telling you that Gavin Newsom runs big, rich donor campaigns. And because of that, he is not trustworthy. He will never follow through on promises to black communities and other marginalized communities of this country. He makes promises about criminal justice reform all the time, economic investment, housing, education, and even policing, but the results in California don't match the promises. Meanwhile, his policies in California often protect wealthy interests or avoid real redistribution of power and resources. Mass incarceration and policing are still disproportionately impacting black communities in California, and Gavin Newsom isn't doing anything about it because he has the same paymasters as JD Vance. Find somebody else for 2028.
Your thoughts, young brother. The young brother, I don't know if he's in California, but I definitely have heard from legislators in California that feel this way about Newsom. I think he, in a sense right now, is one of the leading candidates to possibly run. And we've talked about on this show, he definitely has those aspirations and is setting himself up. But I don't know that the young brother said any lies from what I can tell and what little bit research I've seen like I've done. I don't know where you stand with Gavin Newsom. But again, I thought a relative fair critique on what his focus and interests are. I'm not saying one way or another whether Gavin Newsom is good or not, but I respect what the brother is bringing to the table. Your thoughts, Brother Emil?
That was a statement of surrender, in my opinion. And the surrender is that you if I don't like him, I'm not going to vote. And that's one of the reasons we're in this mess today. What was it? Over 90 million people didn't vote. I think 89 million registered voters didn't vote in the last election. And that's one of the reasons why we have the president we do today. We got to stop thinking that it's all or none. I don't like this guy. I don't like that guy. Black people in America have voted for harm reduction for most of their time they had the right to vote. That's not because we wanted harm reduction as the most likely outcome. It's because those are the choices presented to us. You've heard me beat the drum on primaries. If we don't like it, you got to vote in the primary. That means participation. We in this show talk about participation. And so what we got to do is we got to get away from 2 years. We haven't even got to the midterms, and we're already talking about the coronation of Gavin Newsom as the Democratic nominee. Two plus years before we get to the Democratic National Convention. We've got to stop talking like nihilistically. We've got to start talking realistically. We've got to start seeing people step up and say, I'm going to push the primary as a weapon against a potential candidate who's going to not represent me and my interests. I get the critique of Gavin Newsom. I'm not saying anything about that critique. What I am saying is to say 2.5 years before the election, if I see this guy's name, I'm giving up. I'm not voting. That is a surrender. We've got to start talking more militantly as voters and saying, no, if you don't produce a candidate I like, that primary is going to be ugly. I'm going to contest the Democratic National Convention. I'm going to make it impossible for you to simply present some corporate candidate. I'm using his language. And that's the end of it. If you don't like it, you got to stand up and you've got to use your vote much more militantly than simply saying, well, I don't like it and I'm just going to, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth, so I'm not going to vote. You've got 2.5 years. Let's do more than surrender. Let's speak on it. Let's use the vote more militantly. And let's say to the powers that be, as voters, if you're going to present me a corporate shill, you're going to find out that my vote is more powerful. Remember what Shelley said 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. He said, if you're afraid of Trump, be afraid of me. I'm the voter. That's the attitude we got to have going into every election.
Yeah, I love what you're bringing to the table. Again, that's why we do this show, right? Just to really walk through, and like you said, definitely not to a default position of not participating, right? So we definitely don't want people to default to that. I will say, to a degree, I think the young man is attempting to do a lot of what you're saying, though. Again, just my personal defense of him, I don't know him, but just in the sense of him saying, "Give me somebody better." He does say that. So
yes, he does.
I think he's being proactive to say, hey, before y'all let this guy become the lead dog, here are some issues. Y'all better give me somebody else. So I do feel like he's doing a lot of what you're saying, but it does sound like he did say he might bow out at the end. So I know you, and I agree with you. I do take issue. I don't remember if he exactly said that, but if he did, I do take issue with bowing out, because at the end of the day, if you do not participate, you cannot complain about the pothole in your neighborhood, because again, the people that fix the potholes, you got to vote them in.
It wasn't that he said he says that's why people won't show up. And what I'm saying is the message has got to be more consistent. I'm not giving you my vote because I'm not voting because I don't like the candidate. I'm going to vote, and I'm going to punish you at the primaries for even considering somebody like Gavin Newsom. You bring that to me, you're getting a fist in the chest. And that has to be a message that coming from podcasts and others, we got to be consistent. Don't do it. because you're going to feel some pain. It's not going to be a walk in the park anymore.
Nah, good stuff. Yeah, that walk in the park has definitely become the issue. Matter of fact, one thing that this is one of my personal interests that I always talk about is the Citizens United and how it is definitely disavowed and taking away the power from us as the people. I was glad to see that that's something, a loop that Trump says he wants to put a top on, from what I understand. Like that's something that he's saying he's going to bring forward, where that corporate, not necessarily Citizens United, let me say that, but let me say the one that I remember was specifically not allowing the corporations to buy single family homes no more. That was one positive that I definitely hope that bill goes through, because the housing market that we see now is because the corporations was allowed to buy up so many homes during the pandemic when people were, losing their homes or didn't have money because of the pandemic. The corporations bought up a lot of products. So that's why there's limited supply and the prices are so high. I don't think that should ever happen again. I think the bill is a little too late. I'm not blaming. I'm just glad that that's something that's being pushed during this administration. I hope both sides actually pass that. That's one thing that I remember from it reminded me of something that I like when it comes to corporates versus us as the people, if that makes sense. All right.
Yeah, no, this is something that's really important. The loophole in the tax code allows corporations to buy lots of homes as the economy really, really struggled. Now, typically what you'll see is that goes in cycles, but the tax code reinforces it. And who signed that tax code, by the way? Right. So you're seeing that really become a problem. And the issue is that the Democrats recently just put out a bill that said, hey, we can counter your proposal. Are you serious about this proposal? Here's a counter to that proposal that goes further than that. But to your point about housing limits on corporations buying housing, the problem is at the state level. It's also a federal tax code issue, but it's at the state level. What are states doing to limit the buyers of those homes? And then you have games that get played, they create corporate entities, and then they have multiple shell companies that are doing all these transactions in order for one company to end up as the owner of all this stuff. And then they're price gouging on rents, making it really hard for people to afford housing, which is putting a lot of people on the street and making housing much more unaffordable. If you follow the logic of this, and this is something that very few people talk about, but if you follow the logic, at some point, the corporations go broke because they cannot produce a sustainable economy with these houses. Along the way, the damage that they do is putting a lot of people into bankruptcy and a lot of people out of homes that need them. But there is a tipping point, and that tipping point, when it comes, will crash the market. It's happened before, it'll happen again. And that's what they run afoul of. So what the corporations are trying to do is find that sweet spot where they don't get to that tipping point.
Oh, okay.
But there's going to be a reckoning because basically they're pricing themselves out of their own customers.
Wow. So yeah, it probably is adding to the homelessness problem that we're kind of seeing in the country, right? So that makes sense. Matter of fact, that reminded me of another one talking point that I did want to address specifically. Again, I hate having our brothers on the right to talk about this or whatever, but I do think, again, we're saying if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. Matter of fact, let me address Brad before I make this point. Brad says, when you fought propaganda with propaganda, got it. He was talking about when we gave the context to what happened with Gavin Newsom here in Atlanta. And I would just say to you, Brad, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your comments. We definitely welcome them. But no, given the full context is absolutely the opposite of propaganda. We just gave the full context of what actually happened. He wasn't in front of a majority black audience, and he didn't say it in that way. It wasn't just the 38 seconds that they used to make the meme. The reality was he was talking about his dyslexia. That's not in the meme at all. So no, we didn't use propaganda. We actually gave the facts, and we're not on the side here. We're on the side of getting the facts out. So that was not propaganda with propaganda. They definitely wanted to address that. But one thing that I did want to address from the State of the Union is, again, the politics, the show versus the reality. And so I absolutely understood and expected, if you will, President Trump to take advantage of the lowering crime rate, right? Emil, you still there? I know you might not be there on video. Okay, cool. To take advantage of the actual lowering crime rate. And so that's what a politician is. Hey, if it's happening on my watch, it is up to me. The reality is the crime rate has been lowering since 2022. And the culprit of that has actually been, let me make sure I get the right name of this. You're probably more familiar with it than me, Emil, because that's why I bring you on the show. You're the expert here. But let me see if I think I got the name of it here. But more of that is more relegated to the American Rescue Plan Act is why we've seen such a decrease in crime. What is that reality? Let me break down the details of it. So you and I on this show, Emil, we've battled Brother Shelley, we've battled Brother Leo, who they're big fans of more policing. The reality is we are right now in a nationwide shortage of policing. Like it's a nationwide issue. We have a shortage of policing. It has been around for the last 3 years. Yet crime has had significant drops in the last 4 years because what? Over policing does not reduce crimes. You know what reduces crime? Jobs. It's always been an economic conversation. So right now we have a continuation into 2025 of what was already happening since 2022, and you're going to see significant drops because unfortunately during the pandemic we had a 40-year decline of crime in the country. In the pandemic we had the highest jump in murders around the country, all districts around the country. Now, the politics of this conversation is that the Democratic cities had the rise in murders. The reality is countrywide, whether it was a Democrat-run city or a Republican-run city, we had a 30% increase in murders during 2019, during the years. It was a significant jump because we had never seen that type of jump. We didn't reach the heights of the early 90s. We didn't get back to where we were in the 90s, but the jump was significant. I remember having a specific conversation with Brother Leo before we started this show. During that time here in Atlanta, if you've ever heard of Buckhead, that's our, in a sense, the extravagant area here in Atlanta or whatever. They were literally talking about separating from the city because crime was so bad, right? And so the political narratives around that time was because unfortunately you did start having people in the lower ends going to Buckhead committing some crimes. You know, which is kind of new for that area. So they were saying, "Wait, we're going to separate. The crime is so bad, or whatever." And it was getting the talking points was all about behavior, the things that people always talk about with crime, and the policing, not having enough police. All those same talking points. And I remember being on. It was a Zoom at the time, and I literally said to the entire Zoom, "I said, does anybody in here realize that during this pandemic, Atlanta, who's always been in the top 5 in income inequality, went from 4th to number 1 in the country. That's the answer to your crime. It's an economic issue. All these talking points y'all making in this political conversation have nothing to do with actually causes crime. So I say all this to say that this, from what I understand, American Rescue Plan Act, it offered $1.9 trillion stimulus package in 2021. It took a couple years for the jobs that it created. The jobs that it created were specifically, let me find it, make sure I say it right. I don't want to tell people the wrong information. Give me 1 second. Teachers, counselors, clinicians, local police officers. These jobs were shored up by this act. And then it took a couple of years and you start seeing the things that actually affect crime for real start to lower it because they were getting to the youth early. These are the things that the Brandon Johnsons, the mayors in Baltimore, the mayors in Alabama, the Brad Johnson in Chicago, when he says, Trump, why are you sending these extra troops here when we're at a 30-year low? We're at a 30-year low in murders and crimes. This is before the troops got sent in. So again, I expect and understand the politics and the show of it. Hey, crime is reducing because of what I've done. No, those troops were employed 6 months ago. This is a continuous trend. This is just me talking about the facts and the realities of what's causing the crime reduction. The concern that the mayors have talked about, and I'll let you say something, Mill, the concerns that the Brad Johnsons and the mayors of Baltimore, again, they're having these success rates with these type of programs, the money they receive from this act to be able to get to the youth sooner before they even get into criminality, these type of things, these things that have been so effective. What have they talked about when he was sending the troops? we've been doing this effectively, and now you're taking the funding away from the things we've been using to work. So the numbers won't go up immediately. That has to take a process. But if you're taking away from the funding from the things that actually work, I will not be surprised that in a year or two from now, we're going to see this thing creep back up, because at the end of the day, it's an economic issue. Go ahead, Emil.
So this is really important that Trump should take credit for it. He's the president. He's going to. Biden should have taken credit for it. He should have, because that was part of his whole plan. Obama should have taken credit for it, right? We need people to recognize that these trends are beyond the 4 years or 8 years of a president. They take a lot of work to get into place, and it's easy for them to go back to the way they were. Hence the 2020 spike. Because when you took people away from their jobs and you put them in homes, what went up? Domestic violence went up. Marital counseling went up. Divorces went up. And then we saw crime. We saw nonviolent crime go up. We saw violent crime go up. We saw rape and murder go up, because people were not doing something with their time. They were idle. We know the programs that work, midnight basketball, among others, things that get kids involved in the community, things that get kids jobs, things that get kids job training. All those tend to work. When you don't fund those kids tend to find ways to get in trouble. So we know what works and we know what doesn't work. So the question is, what's the national priority to keep these crime statistics low? Oh, by the way, in the same time that these crime statistics went down, you saw fentanyl go up, overdoses to fentanyl go up. You saw overdoses. Remember, we had the oxycodone that went down.
That's the one area that's going up. Drug crime is going up. Drug crime
and this is where we have a chance as a nation to address some of the really lingering problems with drugs and other substance abuses as part of the trend of reducing crime. See, this is where, if you're looking for another place where we can start to reduce crime, let's get those drugs involved here and really get rehabilitation and drug education as part of the mix of things that work to reduce crime, because we're doing it without it. We're doing it without it. So imagine if we did put that into play. Wow. There's much more we can be doing to bring these stats down. Cities across the nation like Chicago, Newark, New York are seeing murder rates as low as they were in the 50s and 60s. Yeah. That ain't one president. That ain't one time. That's a bunch of stuff happening at the same time. And now we have a chance to do even more. We got to get more pressure on our politicians to figure out what's working, do more of it, and then add the things that are not working so we can get those rates down too.
Yep. And here's where, again, our brothers on the right, they fall prey and think that it's the over policing. Here's the reality of those crime reductions. Again, I've looked at the numbers. There is no higher reduction where Trump sends ICE or troops to. The reductions are the same around the country. And so the sending the extra troops, while you saw as we talked about on this show, the uptick that you initially move when the troops show up, and the criminals have to figure out, okay, let's figure out how to move around them. It takes a second. So you get that initial, right? And then it just evens right back out. So again, now that we're 6 months in, the places that he sent troops to, the places that he sent ICE to, because that's what he took credit for in the actual State of the Union. Hey, these ICE troops driving down crime. No, the crime rate decreases. It's the same in the cities that he didn't. The reductions are the same. So if what he said in fact was true, we should see higher reductions where he sent troops to. That's not what we see according to the actual numbers. This is not me for or against. This is the getting rid of the propaganda. All right, let's see here. We got Kenny highlighting something else that we talked about a few seconds ago. He says Trump said that about corporate housing. I don't believe him. That house he built has a fortune in NYC. Look at what he and Leona Henley did in the 80s to NYC with affordable housing. So this brother's saying he thinks, again, I hope he pushes that bill. I'm a fan of that bill, but Brother Kenny says he don't believe him. So I have to respect that. And then this brother Chris says, are you talking about Chicago, Memphis, Tennessee is way better? Now I was talking about crime across the nation. I was just highlighting that the State of the Union, President Trump, as he should, took credit for the lowering of crime. To Emil's point, Biden never said nothing about it, and the crime was going down significantly under his time. Again, we talk about how terrible Democrats are at messaging. Again, the facts are the facts. So just so you know, we were talking about kind of around the nation, not necessarily in particular places, but we're seeing significant drops, especially in murder rates over the last 4 years. I would offer, just based on my research, and not me personally saying this, I'm getting this from, I should have gave credit to the guy I got it from, John Roman, the director of the Center of Public Safety and Justice at the National Opinion Research Center. He's the one that says the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 is the biggest factor in why we're seeing what we're seeing. So that's not me saying that. That's just what this guy says. He says this has been the biggest factor for this reduction across the country. All right, I'm gonna get one more clip and get my brother Emil back on his European trip that he's having such a good time. I was gonna play a cut about Talarico versus Crockett in Texas. That is definitely ramping up. Again, how much time do you got? Let me see if you got time for 2 cuts or one. I want to make sure I'm respecting your time.
Oh no, go ahead.
All right, we'll do both. All right, cool. So this is because I mentioned it on the promotion, so I do want to try to cover everything we promoted. Then I got one more cut after this.
For years, Jasmine Crockett was everything that the far left claimed that they wanted in a leader. A brilliant civil rights attorney, a fierce advocate for voting rights, a woman who stood in committee hearings and dismantled Republican talking points with surgical precision. When she called out Trump and the Republican Party, aggressive far leftists erupted in applause. When she became a national voice of the Democratic Party representing the future of a multiracial democracy fighting for the working class, she was hailed as our Democratic superstar. It was when she was convenient. That was when she was their megaphone, their frontline soldier, not when she became their candidate. Representative Jasmine Crockett announced she was running for the United States Senate. Praise from the far left is oddly not there. Instead, they gave their support to her opponent, James Talarico, a 2-year middle school teacher, youth pastor, and state representative. A man whose legislative accomplishments, while respectable, pale in comparisons to Crockett's record as a practicing civil rights attorney, elected official in both the Texas House and the United States House of Representatives, and national party leader who served as co-chair for the Harris-Walz campaign. America's far left is backing this man who has centered his campaign on opposing billionaire influence, blasting wealthy donors, and proposing a $10,000 contribution cap. But he still accepted a $59,000 check, one from Republican mega donor Marion Adelson. Yes, the same Adelson who poured $100 million into pro-Trump efforts in 2020. Black women are celebrated as symbols, but not trusted as leaders. They can be the voice of your movement, the face of your resistance, the warrior in your viral videos, holding the goddamn megaphone. But when it comes time to actually give them power, to let them do the work, when they ask you for your support to move up and not just speak out, suddenly, there are concerns about electability. Texas Democratic primary is on March 3rd, and early voting has already started. Democrats will have a choice. Will they support the black woman with the record, the credentials, and the national standing, or will they continue the pattern of praising black women when it's convenient and abandoning them when it counts? For the work that she's done, for the sacrifices that she's made, Representative Jasmine Crockett deserves better than to be discarded by the same people who made her a star. And frankly, to be honest, so does the Democratic Party.
So that cut was from Zachary Kurt. I want to make sure I give him his credit. Brother Emil, you still with me? All right, I'll rock it out while he's
I'm here. I'm here.
Cool. So you see a breakdown. Again, that is ramping up because remember people were a little surprised that she decided to even make that Senate run based on her. She had got in a sense gerrymander out of her district, from what I recall. If I know you know that better than I do, or whatever. And so somewhat of a bold move. I think at the time you thought it was a good move, considering that had actually happened to her. I think versus just trying to somehow continue to fight for a position based on a gerrymandering. If I remember, I could tell me if I'm wrong, but if I remember, I think you thought that her move was actually a smart move, even though I think it surprised people at the time. But you see this brother saying, "Hey, people in a sense wanting to maybe get behind the Democrats themselves now, as much as they've leaned on Jasmine over these last few years. Now they're actually kind of pushing Talarico over her because you always get this sentiment of you need someone who's not quite as radical to actually be able to beat the actual Republican candidate or whatever." And this brother is saying, "Hey, Don't use us like that. And I always highlight Gary Chambers, who I typically show in the show, but just for lack of time, I won't show a cut from him. But Gary Chambers is highlighting that in the last major election, in another cut I saw, he was that only 6% of people showed up, which is what you're always talking about in these primaries, right? In these other, so he's talking about specifically in Texas, a congressional seat was won with only 6% of the voting public showing up. And so he always highlights that right now, if people actually get up and go vote, then they won't have to, in a sense, get the corporate Democrat ran down their throat, and that Jasmine actually could win that seat and actually win it against the Republican based on more people voting. Because if you only got 6%, and a lot of those districts have a lot of black people as well, assuming that, in a sense that they would vote for her, that she could actually win the seats easily just based on the numbers, which is a strategy you're always talking about. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so this is the thing. What he's saying rhetorically is true, but right now Jasmine Crockett is leading in the polls.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, for real. Like in some polls, double digits over Talarico. She's done her job in producing a very consistent message that the voters are resonating with across the board. Of course, she's got the black vote at something like 87% of the black vote, but she's only losing the white vote by about 4 to 5%, 55, 45, something like that. So she's really competitive across the board. Hispanic, she's winning. It looks like about 4 to 5%, which is in the margin of error. So she's really putting together a great campaign because of her reputation. So what the brother is talking about is the corporate presentation of a politician. And that's where he's 100% spot on. Okay. She's doing it without the machine backing her the way the machine is backing Talarico, because Talarico, and I like Talarico, don't get me wrong. If he wins, I'm not going to be upset. I'm just going to be happier with Crockett because she's done some things in the House that really represent what we need done from the left, which is really taking power to task. Our brother Leo often says that she's a very entertaining politician, but she's also a very spot on one when you look at how she does things like investigations and hearings. However, what you're not going to see until after the primary is the big Democratic machine backing her, because right now it looks like they're backing Talarico. And that's because Talarico has all of the presentations that they like, and Jasmine Crockett doesn't. Jasmine Crockett looked like she was a bit premature, but I love that she said, I'm going to ride the wave of popularity that I've built. And I think
you have said that.
Mary. Yeah. And I think that was the right move still, because it's showing up in the early polling from the University of Texas. And I think it's either the University of Houston or another policy center out of Houston. And those are the things that I think she's going to be able to really push the needle on. And what's going to happen is Texas is going to be at play for that seat. Texas is turning purple, and most people aren't aware just how purple Texas can be, but it's going to take a progressive politician like Jasmine Crockett to make it purple. It cannot be another corporate Democrat. It's going to have to be someone who's truly progressive, who's going to make it purple. And she seems to be right now in the early polling, the right choice.
Hey, the verdict is out. You definitely called that. I definitely thought it was premature. And obviously, like I say, just based on early polling, it looks like you might be right. I thought it was too soon for her to make this jump. So yeah, that was my perspective on that. Let me see if trying to get to some of these comments. The brother says she's too emotional for me. I understand that perspective as well. Somebody said murder came down during Biden's years.
I always laugh when people say emotional. What does that mean? Because you have a president who calls names, who visibly gets frustrated and enraged, who makes decisions based more on how he feels disrespected than how he feels respected. So what does it take for a politician to be considered emotional or not emotional? Because when Jasmine Crockett does her examinations and hearing, she is passionate, but she's also incredibly factual. But so is it the emotion presenting the facts, or is it the emotion that has she been knee-jerk in her policies? I'm really just want to make sure that I understand how the emotional word is being used in this context.
I think it's a fair question, but obviously Chris is not on here with us, but I'm assuming his name is Chris since it's in his name. But I'll defend Chris just from this standpoint. Maybe he doesn't like the emotion from Trump or her. I'm just saying that could be the context or the perspective as well, just to, share it out. If you get a chance, Chris, you can respond, and I'll try to get it up here on here since Emil kind of called you out a little bit. Let me do this last cut and get us out of here. Let me see how he might have answered. Let me see what he said. He says, that's what I'm talking about with her. She called the paralyzed. Oh, yeah. He said, oh, yeah, I agree with him on this. He says, that's what I'm talking about.
Sure.
She called the paralyzed governor of Texas Captain Hot Wheels. That's not right. I definitely agree that that's too far. That's one example, but I agree with that.
No name calling in any context. I just hope it goes all the way around because we have a president of the United States who's done the very same thing. And we don't seem to have the emotional word thrown out against him the way we do against Jasmine Crockett.
Now, I disagree with you on that. Now, people are always talking about how emotional Trump is. So I don't know if that is talked about all the time. So I think both sides definitely do that enough. Let me get this last one out and we'll get out of here. This was a beautiful video from my perspective. If you and I could start the moderate party, we probably would never win things because we're not extreme enough. But I think this brother his name is, it was hard to read it. Jack Fur Jacker is what he goes by, at least in Instagram. So I like to give people their credit. Jack Ferg Jack. Jack Ferg Jack. Don't know what that means, but anyway.
Okay, so I took every issue that 80% of Americans agree on, and I combined them all into one bill. Here's all 22 of the issues. Number 1, end gerrymandering. Number 2, ban Wall Street from buying single-family homes. Number 3, ban Congress people from becoming lobbyists. Number 4, ban Congress people from trading stocks. Number 5, creating a minimum tax for billionaires. And number 6, closing the loopholes that these billionaires would use to avoid that tax. Number 7, congressional term limits. Number 8, ban dark money donations and political campaigns. Number 9, universal paid family leave. Number 10, ending forever wars by repealing the authorization for the use of military force that was passed after 9/11 and for some reason still exists. Number 11, release the full Epstein files with nothing redacted except for the information of the victims. Number 12, ban corporate PACs by overturning Citizens United. Number 13, mandatory disclosure for all organizations that donate to political campaigns. Number 14, mandatory police body cams. Number 15, banning junk fees. Number 16, allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Number 17, fully funding Social Security by extending the tax that already applies to most Americans to people who make more than $400,000 a year as well. Number 18, ban adversarial foreign nations from buying American farmland. Number 19, improving veterans' healthcare access. Number 20, establishing common sense data privacy laws, the ones that already exist in most European countries. Number 21, enshrining the right to repair. Number 22, auditing the Pentagon and punishing them with a 0.5% reduction in their budget if they fail the audit. Now keep in mind, every single one of these issues has above 80% support among Americans. Now what I need you guys to do is go into the comments section of this video and tag your congressperson and let them know that you will not be voting for them unless they support this bill. You can also click on the link in my bio to join the thousands of people who've already signed this petition. Thank you for your time.
I'll be signing that petition, brother.
You know what? I'm going to look at it myself because this is what I need for all politicians to hear. You have voters on both sides of the aisle who agree with what that young man just said. It's time for you to start listening to us, the voter, and stop listening to the people lining your pockets. In fact, I would go one more, put the 23 on there. Ban any or sanction any congressperson who uses insider information to trade stock.
Well, no, you don't have to add it because he had one that says they can't even do it. So while serving as a public person, you can't trade.
You can't at all put your money in a blind.
So you might, he said 22, but that's actually in one of his 22. And so, if I can get a politician to run on that, I'm voting on them all day or whatever. But just keep in mind, again, this is what we challenge and again, why we exist. That generally speaking, it's the other issues that we don't agree on that we're typically deciding who we're voting for. And I would love to see politicians come along and support these things that we mostly agree on, which is a reminder to us. There's a lot that we agree on.
We need to start remembering that as these politicians try to use wedge after wedge after wedge to divide us. We have more in common than we do apart. And it's time for us as voters to recognize that our power is in presenting a common front. I disagree with many of my colleagues on the right as to how to do certain things. but I do not disagree with them on many of the things they want to do. So we can disagree on the how all day and still be united on the what. And that, to me, is where we should be much more focused and forceful about what we say as voters.
Yeah. Yeah. So we started out talking about the theatrics of the State of the Union with the left and right sitting apart. But yeah, we need to next year, if we could have our say, if we could put 23 would be just make y'all sit all around each other. I mean, let's just get away from, at the end of the day, these robust left and right conversations are supposed to be so that our country wins. And so sitting on the left and looking silly and getting played by a showman by not standing up, like it's ridiculous when you don't stand up when he brings that woman who lost her daughter to an illegal immigrant. Yes, is it being used politically? Yes, it's being used politically, but where's your humanness? Like, don't be robots in front of us and not be able to stand up when, again, are they overusing it's the Jim Crow laws playbook. It is what it is. Not naive to that, but don't be my representative and not be human and don't stand up when that woman's highlighted that they're bringing her here because she lost her child to an illegal criminal immigrant who got released on no cash bail. Yeah, that happened. Yes, it's politics, but don't be inhuman. That's the least we can ask of you as our constituents. It's the thing that we must demand as the voter of our representatives. Don't play to the theater to where you can't be human. That's how I'll close it. Your last thought, brother. We out of here.
Our goal with this show is to unpack the propaganda. And sometimes we, as the hosts and moderators of the show, have to remember that we can be susceptible to it. So what do? We go back and check our sources. Every chance we get, we check our sources. So I'm going to ask all of you who are watching, before you fall for any lie, make sure you know why it was said in the first place. Almost always, if it was in the mainstream media, whether it was the left or the right, it was meant to enrage you and not to inform you. When you're tired of the propaganda,
listen to us. And we out of here. Thank you, brother, for making time on your trip in Europe. Enjoy yourself, brother.
Appreciate you.
See y'all
Peace
next
out,
week.
buddy.